welcome to the Tales of the Cold North, our recap of our adventures in our Dungeons & Dragons campaign featuring members of the Wisco Dice Tabletop Gaming Podcast. Hey, yo, folks, it's your host, the Conesy with the Most. And I am joined today for our first episode of the Tales of the Cold North by all of these fine gentlemen. Why don't you go ahead and give yourselves a fine round of introductions?
That's Dark Raving Mad, sometimes known as Brian, is here. Who else do we got?
Hey, it's Justin, the Meeples champion.
And it is Matt, the Ghost Walker.
Wow, we're getting better at that every time we do it. Only a few dozen more times, and we'll sound like pros. All right. So first off, welcome to the Tales of the Cold North. This is our short series, that will detail all of our fun that's had at the gaming table for our Dungeons and Dragons campaign, featuring the campaign setting, the product, the module, the Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frost Maiden. You can pick up in episode 83 everything that happened previously, but if one of you fine gentlemen want to give us a really quick recap of what happened in previous episode, that will give everybody an idea what happens, and we'll dive into talking about this new session and what you guys achieved.
Last time on Tales of the Cold North. Our first session was on the normal Wisco Dice feed, and you can go back and check that out, like Ben said. To quick recap, we had two separate parties of adventurers, a sorcerer Deacon, the monk Yanros, and the druid Rika, who had been traveling together and searching for some sort of solution to fix the disappearance of the sun in Icewind Dale. They were quickly joined with Koth, the half-orc paladin, and Lyndall, the halfling rogue, and joined forces and set out to to investigate a series of murders that have been happening in the 10 towns. Pursue the group that is suspected to be responsible. They got sidetracked a little bit and went on a search for some iron that had been lost by a group of dwarves. They rescued it from a band of goblins to ultimately return it successfully back to Bryn Shander for a small reward. And at the start of the second session, the characters were waking up at the Northlook in Bryn Shander the next morning. That is when Koth and Lyndall got to meet sixth party member Swifty, the human wizard, for the first time.
Yep. So that pretty much starts us at session 2, right?
Absolutely.
All right. So now that you're all caught up on where and what we did, let's take a look at what happened in session 2 of this Cold North campaign.
I think the next day started like a lot of adventures do, sort of in that little bit of downtime. It was nice to see the addition of a new party member with Swifty, who it is, obvious is making up for his lack of half. He's not half orc, halfling, or half elf. So he's got to make up somehow. So he's obviously elected for, I will say, comedic relief, which is a nice, I think, addition to the group. He's always telling jokes. But it started out in that interim with, like, I think a lot of times you do the traditional, hey, we're going to go sell stuff. We're going to get ourselves ready to go again because we've done that just the day before. But, I think it went pretty quick. But, right about the time we kind of finally got our stuff together, we made those hard decisions like, hey, we just got 50 gold. What do we want to do with it? Oh, we don't have a lot of healing. Well, I guess we'll go buy ourselves a healing potion. So, we had to make those kind of transitions. But we're about to leave town again, and darned if another person doesn't come up and say, hey, look, there we're, the bar, where we're staying, the shipment of mead never arrived from Good Mead. So the good news for us, I think, is, hey, it's already on the way. We were already heading to that town. It's probably something we said we'll look into. Though I could tell at least some of the characters like, oh my god, not again. Why are we going to get torn off this track? So I felt like at least a little bit. I was like, come on, guys, it's the same town. We'll be okay. We can always send word back. We don't have to run all the way back here. We can just, maybe deal with this real quick. So at least I feel like that's where we landed right as we were leaving town.
I certainly wasn't quite that evil to make you have to choose which direction you wanted to go. Yet.
I do remember Rika at some point just being exasperated that there was yet another thing that would distract us.
I felt like the road was pretty easy going until we got to, the outskirts of the town of Goodmead. And, we were starting to get into the forests and things like that. And I think we were trying to follow our traditional way of rolling and getting all those bad rolls out early. I was pretty sure nobody was going to see what Ben was having us roll perception checks for. And then all of a sudden, somebody out of the blue had made their roll, and it was like, hey, there's this fox shadowing us in the trees, and that's kind of odd. Very quickly turned, and it turned out the fox was just was able to talk, which was really odd because we figured, hey, we've got a druid, she'll go talk with animals, and she preps her spell, goes and casts it, and then the thing starts talking common. So
Yeah.
But I thought that was a nice trick. And I don't know, how would you describe him? How would you describe the fox?
The fox was like just super sort of energetic and flighty, and I just remember him being like, hey guys, like, what's going on? I think what was the first things we started asking it?
I think Lindell seemed the most suspicious about it. Like, we were wondering why it was following us. Like, was kind of the immediate question, I guess. And I think, like, the fox was smart enough to talk, but wasn't overly complicated. So it's just like, I'm watching you guys. It's like, well, why are you watching us?
Oh yeah. It's like I'm watching people on the road or something.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, we did kind of quickly figure out that the fox was made capable of speaking due to the intervention of a more powerful druid. And I'm going to butcher her name, but I think it was Ravison, and who oddly enough was tied to our druid because our druid had studied under this druid for a while. So
All right.
we got a little bit out of Rika, who kind of shared that Ravison wasn't necessarily a bad person, but they weren't exactly the kindest, gentlest master either. So they could be a little bit of a taskmaster and stuff like that. At least that's how I interpreted it. I didn't know if I really thought they were necessarily cruel, but I will say in character, my character's like, I trained as a monk. That sounds pretty normal to me. So, I mean, that was interesting because it's like we're already seeing these tie-ins from our backgrounds where it's like this person who is tied to somebody in the party has somehow flitted across our path. And what is this person going to be involved in this for? And I don't know, it just got the juices flowing pretty quickly for me. And I don't know enough about Rika's background to know, like, other than this person's in her background, how does this person tie in? It'll be interesting. I'll be interested to see how it develops myself. So
she said she had like trained with her or studied under her, but I don't remember if she said like it was for like a long time or just a short period. Do you guys remember? Was it like was it a long time teacher of hers, or just like she trained her for a little bit? Do you remember?
I don't recall exactly either.
I do recall though that the fox told us that Revison, this other druid, had been gone for a long time, and we were trying to figure out like when it had last seen her, and he's like, I haven't seen her in ages or something like that. there arose a debate as to whether foxes were able to tell time enough to give us enough information on that.
At least 4 days.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. When you think about it, right? How does it tell time?
Yeah.
I mean, I know we were able to at least get a little more information out of the fox, like the deal about the fox said there was an ogre, because we did ask about Mead, and because the fox is watching the road. Did you see the Mead thing come through? And he said it was taken by an ogre.
Yep.
And I know in character, my character's like, okay, ogres are pretty powerful. That could be rough, but there are a lot of us. There's 6 of us, so if it's just one ogre, I think we'll be okay, right?
No problem.
Yeah, we got general directions, but I mean, it is a fox, so it's open to interpretation. We'll just say that.
Yeah, it might have just pointed its nose in some direction, like it went that way.
That was basically what it said. It was kind of off that direction, and that's where we kind of left that. And I know Lyndall was still pretty suspicious about how he was reporting to the druid, and we had found out like the druid was like whatever worship, maybe, I don't know if that's the right word, but to the Frost Maiden Oriel. And that's maybe like our kind of nemesis in this case. Like, I don't know if it's, definitely an evil thing we're trying to go after or whatever, but there was some discussion. Lyndall seemed very much to want to kind of end the fox, like kill it to stop watching us. And like, of course, Rika being the druid didn't want to go with that. And like, I don't think any of the rest of us really saw a need to do that. So I think we kind of talked him out of that. But he seemed awfully suspicious of the fox.
Leave it to the rogue to want to stab something. I'm just saying,
Stabby time.
Yeah.
But I think that's where we kind of left the fox at that point and kind of continued on, kind of tried to mark our spot a little bit where we had seen him and maybe where we could find the ogre, and then continued on towards the town.
Yeah. Well, and I think the rest of the trip was fairly uneventful, if I'm remembering correctly, into Good Mead, and then wasn't too difficult on our way into town because I think the thing that really struck me as we got into Good Mead was how, like, I had this vision in my head of how small the 10 towns were, but I don't think it really struck home until we were like in Good Mead, and I'm like, this is one of the quote major towns of the 10 towns, at least in my head, right? But then I'm like, okay, what are the major structures? The Mead Hall. Oh, and there's this little shrine somewhere, and it's like, oh, this is really not a big area, and it's just kind of the thing that really struck me from my head was just that, oh, wow, this is like, there really aren't that many people up here in the cold north, so we did very quickly find who we were looking for, though. That caravan of difficult, I guess that's the wrong word, caravan of those potentially dangerous people. So
yeah, they were camped right inside the entrance, I think, like dealing wares, right?
Real quick, Matt jumped into describing Good Mead. One of the things that I'm doing as a DM is I have a handout for each town that the players reach. So immediately as they reach the border edge of Good Mead, we have characters that are from the 10 towns. They would be able to share a lot of this information. None of the towns are very big. It's really a small town community. General information is contained within this handout. It's usually a page or 2 pages, and I just move it into a Google Share. So we stopped as they got into the edge and they read this handout, which is where I think, Matt, you came with that whole idea that this town is not big and there's nothing here. And Good Mead is a town of 150 people roughly.
Yeah.
Then, yes, as you came up, you ran into this merchant caravan, right, Justin? That's where you were going?
Yeah. And I think Lyndall immediately, he recognized them pretty quickly, or was able to at least confirm, like, yes, that's them. I think he basically immediately started to put on a disguise because he wanted to not get recognized by them. So like he ended up throwing on a disguise, trying to just sort of, what I think, Matt, you said, he was just trying to fly casual past them and not get noticed, since he would be recognized probably, whereas they don't know the rest of us. And then Matt and did Rika go with you you guys went to shop
Yep.
at the place, right?
I think Rika and Deacon went with us too. So
Yeah, we both went.
yeah. The thing I always laugh though, get this image and it's like everybody tries, like I get this image of this group of 6 people. They're approaching, they spot the merchant caravan, and then they stop dead in the middle of the road to have this 5 to 7 minute debate before breaking up, because it's, I don't know why I always get this amusement in my head, because you're like, everybody's like, oh, and then we move on. And I'm like, so you stopped immediately on seeing them, had this kind of furious debate amongst yourselves, and then you tried to fly casual. So I don't know. I always find that amusing because it almost always happens, because it's like you literally stopped in the middle of the road. Like, what are you going to do? There's nowhere to hide.
Yeah, it'd
I don't
probably
know.
be nice to be a little more spontaneous about it, like treat it almost like an encounter kind of thing.
Yeah, it was just kind of
Wouldn't be
interesting.
suspicious, but I don't know. That's kind of how the game flows, I guess.
Yeah, it does. I don't know why. I always get a chuckle out of it inside my head, because it's just kind of the way it flows. And
Mhm.
just, I thought Rika did a pretty good job of staying true to form. She immediately was like, shiny baubles, she's the druid. I'm looking for ribbons, shiny baubles, and stuff like that. So she just kind of dove right in and, went searching for that stuff. And I know we were all like sizing them up, and there were like 5 very clearly armed people in the area. And then, of course, the one guy that we're looking for, we could recognize pretty quick, because I thought it was a really nice description. A guy, tall, slightly taller, in his mid-30s. He's got this olive complexion, almost no body hair, which I have to imagine is not real common in the far north. The black hair and a ponytail, well dressed, but not warmly dressed.
Yeah, I got a picture of like a Mediterranean
Yeah.
looking guy, maybe, and even maybe that type of clothing, the way he described it. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was really well done, because you kind of get this like image in your head of this guy kind of hanging out. And we all know it's flipping cold, it's -30 and he's not wearing a coat. So no, I thought it was good. So
And I think we knew that this was our target, and one of you guys like engaged him and were like directly asking him like, why are you able to resist the cold or whatever, right? I can't. I think that happened then when you were shopping, right?
yeah, I
Yeah,
can't remember. Was that you?
Rika and Rika and your character were kind of more shopping, and then I think like we didn't actually have to directly approach him. I think Torg, the kind of the dwarf merchant leader person, kind of came over to us.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly why, but she just kind of came over and talked to us. And that dude, I can't remember his name now either, but the interesting guy,
Yeah.
he had come over along with her. So since she kind of started the conversation, and then my character was more curious about the other guy, so I kind of asked him a few things directly. It was kind of a learning thing from this session. Like, I really didn't expect to just be able to go up and like walk up and talk to these guys, kind of thing. So it kind of threw me off because I didn't really prepare for that. Like, I was wanting to find this guy and kind of shake him down a bit and stuff, but then when it happened, I was like, oh, that's not what I expected. So I kind of ran out of things to ask.
Yeah, this was not the interrogation scenario you had envisioned, was it?
I thought we'd have to kind of sneak around and be more careful, and that's kind of what we ended up doing. But this first encounter was so casual, it just I wasn't prepared for that. So I think I'm gonna have to, before sessions, kind of think about things and possibilities of that happening, like things you want to find out and stuff like that.
Well, I was just going to say, it seemed like it forced you, Brian, to be a little more diplomatic and careful with your questions, to sort of ask it in a way that didn't seem like you were prying too much, sort of, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Just kind of blatant curiosity more than, investigating.
And we
So
learned
I guess
that.
maybe that's good. I didn't have something too prepared and got ourselves in trouble or anything like that.
Well, but we did learn from that he is like I forget the exact term, but he was born on midwinter night or day, and is therefore what do they call it? A child of Oriel or something like that. So it's like a special blessing that's potentially bestowed upon any person who's born like on this specific days. Is that what you guys remember?
Yeah, it was certain rumors that some worshippers, if they're born on Midwinter's Day, can stand more colder temperatures and stuff like that. But I was thinking we got some of that details maybe from the elderly woman Olivessa that we talked to later.
Oh, right.
No, you got it straight from Suffolk.
We did? Okay. Well, I think he was the one that shared that, but for some reason I had it on my notes later, so I don't know how I got that. But yeah, I mean, I know the dwarf came to me because I was kind of poking around, but I wasn't finding what I was looking for. And then I used the excuse to ask a few questions, partially because I was asking, like, because I am not from this particular region of the 10 towns. I was asking if they had trade goods from farther north and things like that, because that's where I'm from. So, I mean, I had definitely asked about those, but they didn't seem to have any, which kind of makes sense to me. There's a roving caravan. They would sell things along the way, and they probably wouldn't have very many things left over. But yeah, I mean, I don't felt like I mean, at least like you said, it seemed much easier to talk to them. I didn't, like you said, I don't know. It didn't seem like that hard to get some basics out of them, but I didn't feel like we made any progress there either.
Yeah, we got a little bit. I guess some useful stuff we got, like before we left, we kind of asked when they were headed out of town and stuff like that, so we could kind of stay on schedule, especially if we are going to have to go track down this Mead. So we actually got from them like where they were going. I think it was East Haven they were headed to next, and then they were leaving the next morning or whatever, and like we got like how much longer they were going to be selling stuff there and stuff like that, and also kind of found out about their route a little bit, and they did confirm for us that all the places where those murders had happened had been on their kind of trade routes. So we got some good information out of it, although it wasn't super confrontational or, big discoveries or anything like that at that time. And at that point, we kind of left it at that and kind of carried on into town. Deacon I had him stay behind and try to casually keep an eye on them, kind of at the front of the town there to try and figure out where they had been staying in town, while everybody else kind of continued on to the Mead Hall to kind of complete the rest of our investigation of the town and kind of track down any more information about what was happening with the Mead delivery.
Yeah.
I will say that the interaction here, and I had it planned to basically play out the way it did, but I found it was a really neat way to contrast and put you guys in a position where you couldn't use the same tactics that you use to deal with the goblins. And I think that, when you talk about it from the way you pictured it and we're going to approach it in your head, it was, Brian, it was, hey, I was going to have, catch him kind of maybe in the street or something, maybe catch him as he's stalking, going to kill somebody or something else, some other scenario like that. And, oh no, here's this wide open trade market. Yeah. How can I help you? Which was such a really interesting contrast to be able to throw at you guys as the player characters and give you a new challenge that you had to try to unlock and to make this more into a mystery that you have to solve and not necessarily a brute force or intimidation or physical prowess might necessarily unlock all of the mysteries.
Yeah.
I was just going to say it might be a little more like realistic to our investigation. Like everything's not, folding out page after page in front of us. Like we're going to have to actually do some digging and kind of have some more real world encounters. We're not catching everybody red handed, following the breadcrumbs kind of thing, that we're going to have to figure out the story for ourselves.
I agree with that. I mean, the thing that I struggled with was I agree with what Ben set up, because as soon as I saw there's like 5 heavily armed people, the dwarf who approached me had a hand axe on each hip. I mean, there's this they're traders, but they're armed traders. Everybody's ready to bear arms. And I was like, okay, this is not a frontal assault type scenario. So I don't know. I mean, that definitely caught me off guard. I will say, I think as we get a little deeper in, the thing that really threw me off for a loop was I left our interactions with these guys and some of the later interactions not really being sure if this dude's good or bad. Like, I don't think he was, necessarily either way. I didn't get a strong impression like he's the bandit, he's the guy, I've got to hunt him down and we just need to set it up. I was like, I mean, these people are way more armed than a merchant caravan, that's for sure. There's some rough dudes, but I don't know if they're tied to this or not.
I will point out, if you recall the start for where the dwarves were in the previous adventure that you had completed, that they were ambushed by Yeti. Basically, yes, they were off the patrol roads, but they were ambushed by Tundra Yeti. So being armed as a caravan, maybe not necessarily that abnormal. Being armed while you're on the town outskirts trying to sell stuff, okay, maybe you've got something there, but there is definitely logic behind having merchants being armed in this particular area, neck of the world, where monsters could ambush you on the road.
Yep.
I mean, it should be pretty common for merchants, caravans to hire mercenaries or protection of some kind. At the very least, we didn't want to come at them guns blazing.
Yeah.
But we eventually hatched a plan.
Yeah. Well, and it was nice that the other three, and none of who happened to be on, or no, you were there, Koth. So why don't you talk a little bit about what you guys did while we were talking with them? Because you got to the Mead Hall first and, got approached by some people. So why don't you talk about that section? Because you were kind of on your own there with Lyndall and Swifty.
Yeah, I think so. I thought that you guys had kind of caught back up with us before we started talking to proprietor of the Mead Hall. We had spoke with I guess it's the owner of the Good Mead Hall. Also, just nice flavor note, like the description of the mead hall, that just the sound of bees sort of permeates sort of the town almost, and then as you get to the hall, it's just like this constant hum of bees. Really nice sort of descriptive piece there when we were at the mead hall. But we were inquiring about the missing mead, which had like essentially been on its way to Brinchander. I believe that the lady told us that. Help me with the name of the person who runs a town.
It's just the town speaker.
The speaker. Just what they're called. The speaker of the town is basically seen like battling a giant, she said, who like killed him, or at least battled him or fought with him and made off with the mead, is what I recall. So now, like, we have the report of the fox saying, "Hey, it's ogres," and I think he basically was like, "Yeah, we saw a giant." So we're like, is it? or now we're talking about giants? That's a different
No,
situation.
she said an ogre.
She did say ogre. Okay. Thanks for the correction. I couldn't remember when giants became a possibility, but
Basically, when you encountered it the first time.
okay, which we'll get to. But yeah.
Well, the funny thing is, I have ogre/giant on my notes. So somewhere in that conversation, I swear somebody said it could have been a giant or an ogre, but
yeah, maybe she kind of, they didn't really, wasn't really clear the person, because the person ran back who had accompanied the speaker to town and had let them know, and he wasn't very clear. It's just this giant ogre. I think you may have described it as a giant ogre or giant ogre thing or whatever to her, and that's how she related it.
Now we're setting up to track down this thing that had stolen the meat and killed the speaker of the town. So
we struck a deal.
Yeah, she offered us to stay at her home. They cook us some delicious muffins if we returned the meat to them. Or what did she want?
I think we just had to be able to track down the meat and see if we could get it back, and they would take care of dropping it off, if I recall.
Yeah, right, to take it back to Brinchander or deliver it. Yeah.
But then while we're doing this, Deacon's off doing his thing.
So after that conversation, you guys were still at Good Mead and figuring out where we're going to stay the night. I had stayed back. Well, Deacon had stayed back to keep an eye on the merchants. I think they kind of packed up as it was going to get, darker than it normally is, I guess, all the time.
Yeah.
But they closed up their shop, and I luckily, casually enough, kind of followed them and figured out where they were staying, and it seemed like I kind of stood it up pretty well there. So I went back to where you guys knew I'd be to let you guys know where I had found that they were staying, and then we kind of hatched a plan to set up a watch and keep an eye on anything that would happen throughout the night.
Yeah, and just kind of went through the watches, and leave it to at least some person to take a shortcut while doing watches, because we're all, I think that this is where I love the in character versus out of character knowledge, because in character, my character is completely convinced that everybody did their part and did whatever. Out of character, I'm like staring at what Swifty did and went, seriously, you're just gonna have your familiar, who you can't even see through their eyes for the distance you're at, doing the watch for you while you sleep.
Right,
Really?
So we each took our turns one by one. We went out in the cold, and it's cold, right? It's overnight that we're doing this. Each took our turns watching and rolling our checks and seeing what's going on. And was Swifty the final watch?
No, I think he was like middle of the night.
Middle of the night. He ends up, so he has a familiar, an owl. I think its name was MacGuffin.
Yep.
So he decides to send his familiar MacGuffin to return to him if it notices anything. And like Matt said, it's outside of his range that he can actually see through its eyes. So Swifty just slept through his watch and sent his owl instead. And during that time,
of course, the the owl gets spotted by, I believe it was the guy who can make the ice knives, the guy who's never dressed well, who then whips 2 daggers, ice daggers at it, and then we know.
Why did he throw those daggers?
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think he noticed it right away, but so we finally get some action where they're staying. Like Sefik comes out, the dude that we're most interested in. I think he goes over to take a leak at the side of the building or something like that, and then the familiar decides to start hooting. I assume that's what for sure got its attention. I don't know, maybe you could tell this is some magical owl, but so he's hooting at it, and then last thing it sees, is some ice knives coming at it, and that was the end of that.
And Swifty jolts awake as it dies, because I guess he can sense when it dies. I think that's how that works, right?
I don't know if he actually can. I have to go read the spell description, but it seemed narratively to fit the sequence. And all he caught was that last minute, that last second or two snapped him awake as he saw the immediate death of the dagger piercing the owl, or coming, hitting the owl. That's what he sees. Snaps awake.
Yeah.
So I felt like, although that was funny, it was kind of a bit of a blunder on our adventurers' part, but it sure made it interesting. It would have been really good to know, what he had gotten up to. Maybe it was better that one of us didn't get ice knifed or something like that if we weren't careful enough, but there possibly was some information we could have got there that we now don't have. But
hey, Deacon could have taken his, I'm going to corner him in an alley and beat the snot out of him, but sorry, Deacon, you didn't let yourself get slaughtered by ice knives.
Yeah, we did get the confirmation from that, though, that Sefik does indeed have ice knives, or that at least, I guess the question of how much we know about the owl dying is maybe up in the air a little bit in terms of what our characters know.
You found the shards.
Did we go back?
Ice.
Yeah, we
found one ice dagger that was still frozen, laying there, and the other one was shattered.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think the thing that threw me off is that, if we, just living through the lens of my character is not a caster. And I'd say we're probably at least good 50% are casters or more. The thing that threw me off is then all of a sudden, I think it was either Rika or even maybe it was Deacon, was casually oh yeah, I can totally do ice daggers too. And I was just like, what the hell?
She just has that spell. Yep.
And I was like, you totally left that out last week, which was actually not like out of character, made total sense, because we added the use of, I think, some of the additional source books, and I think that was in the Temple or the Elemental Evils book. So when we were like sort of the level 1 characters, nobody knew that spell, and they were all like, where does that spell come from? And spent a little time studying and went, oh, I guess that's a pretty common spell, actually. So
maybe. I don't know how we both ended up selecting it. Like, I know Rika like popped out that she had it right away. Like, I don't know if your characters necessarily know that Deacon has it, kind of thing, but because I haven't actually casted it yet or anything, I just happen to have the spell card on the table.
I thought you just happened to say something, but you didn't. Like, it was very like brief. It wasn't anything like an in-depth discussion. So,
No.
but yeah, then we hit the morning, and that was kind of like, we had to hit those muffins in the morning, or was it something different she had for us in the morning?
No, it was the
was
chocolate
more
chip muffins.
But like after the watch had got disrupted, I think a few of us had set out on the town to kind of investigate anything we could find, because Swifty, upon having his familiar taken out, like kind of let us know.
Yeah.
So I know Koth had kind of roamed the whole town. I went with Lyndall and Deacon. I think we snuck around a little more, but we didn't really get with much besides finding the ice daggers.
Yeah. I guess we were trying to look for maybe if there was a body or some sign of
Any
something
interest?
suspicious. Yeah. But alas, didn't find anything. And
Wrapped up there and had breakfast, and then I think we set out to conquer our other side quest of figuring out the Mead situation.
I will say that was kind of an interesting one, because I did feel like that was an interesting debate amongst the players in character, because like the exasperation growing in certain characters, like Rika's like, oh my god, really, not again, we're distracted. And I felt like Deacon was kind of there too. Like Deacon was like, we'll do it, but I'm not real happy with
it. Being that we had a lead on where they were going and that they would be there, and I think we talked about the timeline, like we should be able to take care of this today, kind of thing, and even possibly still get to East Haven. But I guess it's to be seen as we go on here if that is actually going to happen or not.
Yeah, but that was kind of nice, because then we exited the town, and the first thing we see is this figure coming out. I think it was a dwarf. Maybe it was just a normal human that had a trap. And what's in the trap? The fox.
A frantic fox.
The frantic ADHD fox.
I couldn't tell right away if it was the same fox.
But yeah, I mean,
I think Rika whispered to it, or how did that? How did we find out that it was in fact the talking fox? She kind of.
I think she just decided to just pay him for it. She just said,
"Oh,
I'll buy the whole trap." I think she paid for it. I think she ended up buying. She bought the trap and everything, and then the fox would not talk until we bought the trap and took the fox away, and then it was like, yeah.
Because I think she had released it instantly, which was kind of odd to the trapper person.
It's a druid. Come on, man.
Off into the forest. It was like, thanks. And then we got directions from the fox right then.
We did.
We had the
fox lead us.
And then
that was sort of its thank you for releasing it, I think. Was leading us to our doom.
Maybe. I mean, I thought it was like one of those nice situations, because we got there and, of course, we're checking out, we're doing the party thing. And, we finally get to this cave, which was this wonderful sort of setup that we're like outside the cave, and we got this chance to check everything out. And we're like, okay, we get this could totally be an ogre cave. And, we took the opportunity to poke around a little bit, but then decided we're going to set a trap.
Yep.
We've got the upper hand. Let's set a trap, which will never end badly set for any D&D party ever.
No, it was such a good plan.
I will say, like,
Well, so
I
what
had
we
a
were gonna
hard
do? Can we
time.
describe what our setup was real quick?
Yeah, you
'Cause
can describe the setup. I'm just gonna say I had a hard time thinking of a way to foil this setup because you guys did do a really good job of planning this and
Hmm.
setting it up.
you didn't have to foil it, but but I think it made sense the way you did it. But anyway, so I'll set it up. So we're at the mouth of this cave, and we're certain that this is the cave of the ogre. We think that is stolen the mead, and so we decided to draw a tightrope, essentially, right across the mouth of the
Rope.
cave, and Swifty will attempt to lure the ogre out with the sound of a dying animal. Everyone's sort of set up. Some people are kind of hidden out behind trees, and then I think I had Koth was essentially planted him right in front of the cave with the intention of once the thing had been lured out, I wanted it to run at me to trip on the rope because I was kind of thinking if it just walks out cautiously, it's not going to fall on the rope or something like that.
Mhm.
And so we set the rope. Swifty uses his maybe it was minor illusion or something like that to make the sounds of this dying deer to lure out this monster, and it echoes into the cave, and we wait,
Dun dun dun.
and nothing happened. Nothing came out of the cave.
And then
So then,
sound behind
well,
us.
I
Well,
think you and I actually went into the cave after that because we're like, what's going on? So we stepped over the rope and walked into the mouth of the cave
Yeah, that's right.
and went back a little bit just to see. And I think Koth might have even just yelled into the cave like something like, "Hey, stupid ogre, like come out here" or something. And still nothing. And so we're like, Koth goes further in the cave because I want to see if there is any mead. He didn't find anything. He didn't go very deep in the cave, so he came back. Yanros is just waiting at the mouth of the cave. And then
Yep.
now dun dun dun.
Yeah, it was very anticlimactic. And then it was like, oh, the sounds behind us. It wasn't home.
Yeah.
But then we immediately hear sounds of what sounds like a female calling the name of somebody who's supposedly lives in this cave. So now we're like, oh crap, we're completely out of position. All our soft, squishy targets are back towards where this ogre giant, whatever, because we haven't even seen it yet,
Yeah.
are standing in the wrong spot. And you and I are just on the other side of the rope.
Yeah.
Going, oh crap. So this thing's lumbering through, where you been? Haven't heard from you lately. And we're all like, so, yeah, then things got a little sideways and twisted. So
We tried to demand the mead from it. What was eventually revealed to be Burbig. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't think it knew about it at all. Like it was like, what do you mean? What mead? I don't have any mead.
Yep, it looked like it was carrying some shiny bits of metal, if I recall.
Yeah. Eventually just turned into combat because we wouldn't leave and it was trying to get into its house.
Or its
I should
friend's
say.
house.
Or its husband's house or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, you guys blew through that combat.
We dealt with it pretty handily.
I think
Yeah.
she got one activation,
Wow.
and I rolled miss.
There was
Nothing like confidence boost for you guys.
Did it? Yeah, it missed both. I was gonna say I don't remember anybody getting hurt in the fight
No.
with the
I
female
rolled
Burbig.
poorly on her her only 2 attacks she got in that combat.
in this instance, I might have had Deacon like botch our setup a little bit. Like maybe we could have salvaged our trap a little bit because Ian Rose and Koth were actually in the cave and had its attention, and it was kind of coming at you guys. But like before you got there, I like blasted it in its arm with a firebolt, I think, trying to get it to drop
Yep.
its weapon, like right before it may or may not have tripped over the rope or something like that.
Yeah, I think you
it was
stopped
right
it about
in there. So then I was like,
5-10
oh,
feet short.
like right after I did it, I was like, oh, maybe that didn't really help anything.
Leave it to the sorcerer, who got a little impatient.
I got its attention, and then Rika was standing next to me and was like, "Oh no, why'd you do this?"
Yeah, I remember that.
Oh.
She was like, "No, I don't want it
And then you
over
guys were
here."
like, ah, crap, and actually had to go and like jump over the rope, and then the combat kind of proceeded from there. Where we like kind of whatever got our big confidence boost against these not so intimidating ogres after the whiff, and then making pretty short work of it.
Yeah, I had some really good rolls though. I mean, I had
You were
some
kicking
near
and flipping and
perfect. Yeah, I had some like
just
near perfect
smashing.
flurries and hits.
Oh man.
You know, unfortunately, I think that's where I blew my wad. It was pretty from there on out, but
I will say the overall, like, you guys tapped yourselves pretty good. Like, by the time you go start exploring these caves, most of the spell slots are gone. Most or all your key points are gone.
Those are right.
Nobody had any damage on them, but all of the like really
heavy hitters.
Mm-hmm.
souped up stuff was done. The group then decided to go on into the caves, bolstered with full of confidence.
Yeah, I think when we started that encounter, like we might have thought, it was like our main kind of enemy in this track or whatever, but little did we know as we ventured further into the cave, like it's a pretty big like cavern system. It just wasn't like a little, nook in the wall or whatever kind of thing. Like we couldn't
Yeah.
even see all the way in, so we had to kind of go in. And then Ben unveiled one of his massive like DM feats of 3D printing and had this whole dungeon set all ready to
Yeah.
bust out for us, and that was really awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a giant cave with multiple side passages coming out, crates and barrels, and a giant bonfire in the middle, a broken down cart. There was like pens or like a fence for like, I guess they had goats
There was some
in
goats
one area or something. Like, oh man, professional level, like cave terrain, beautiful, man. Oh,
Yeah.
we got to get some pictures of that up on the blog for this episode. But
I think it's
Ooh.
actually up for the episode 83 post, so
okay, good. Yeah,
you can look at it now. I had spent the better part of the past, I don't know, 2.5, 3 weeks, 4 weeks before the session, printing and painting and laying out in my office this giant board. I don't know, probably 2.5, maybe close to 3-foot board by 2-foot board with this room. It's just one room basically on this giant board and fit for a giant to live in, even a lesser giant like a Verbeeg. And so I knew that was where I wanted the action to happen. And you guys had done such a good job of, and I almost 3D printed up something really cool that would have been that cavern entrance. I just ran out of time. I wanted to reward your effort at setting up that the initial like trying to bait them out encounter, but I didn't want to give up the surprise of unveiling this giant piece of artwork that I had done for the game to let you guys kind of just be like that wow moment. And so railroad without railroading you guys into that situation was a trick. I didn't want you guys to feel like I was stripping your choice, but I was trying to drive you very hard to that moment.
No, and honestly, like the way you described it made a lot of sense because you're like the cave led deeply into this much larger cavern. Like it's not a shallow cave; it's a tunnel that leads to this big cavern where you have all this stuff. So it made sense.
And
You
that
skipped the refuse
whatever
pit.
noises we were making just didn't even make it down to this this area at all. So I think that totally worked in game.
Who could hear it over the buzzing of the flies in the flipping refuse pit, man?
Oh yeah, the refuse pit, right? Yeah, because that was like the first chamber
First
before the
major
big one.
big old
Yeah.
pit that had everything it didn't want to eat or whatever it had thrown down the pit.
I was waiting for one of you guys to dive down there and try to search it.
Leave that to the rogue.
Yeah.
It was
Yep.
it was only rogue deep down that hole. It'll be fine.
Yeah, that was a very ugly second fight, though. I mean, that thing came out swinging, and I don't think we were quite as well set up for that one, and we definitely spent the bulk of our spells and everything. So, like those heavy hits that we did the first time, where there were a couple times I'm pretty sure I dealt over 20 points of damage total. Yeah, that wasn't the way that second one went. So
3 rounds, I think.
I think so, but there was a couple of people I went down, I was near death. Some other people got
Yeah,
really
he got knocked to 0.
Yeah,
I got knocked down to
almost dead.
6 hit points or 5 hit points, maybe. It was me, you, and for some reason, the wizard up in close combat range with this thing. This bigger male Verbig, who I forget his name, but and I think so did you get knocked down and then he basically nearly killed me and I had to run back to get healing from Rika. Actually he might have hit me down to 1 hit point now that I think about it. And
Yeah, I know you were low.
I ran and left the wizard standing next to the giant, who I think thankfully missed or maybe attacked you and then knocked you out or something like that. Rika managed to heal me some. Basically, Swifty cast. What was the spell?
I thought it was Burning
In
Hands.
In the end, he actually hypnotized it.
He hypnotized it. That's what it was. As a hypnotism spell. Saved us 1 round of this thing acting so that we could get prepared to kind of line up and do as much damage as we could to try to take it out before somebody died. Brian, you had kind of held an action to wait for it to wake up or to kind of shake off the hypnotism. And we basically had all of our actions lined up to go before it got to go. I maybe ended up healing Yanros before we acted. I can't remember.
I think so. I think you did a lay on hands, and then I got back into flanking position because. But yeah, it was definitely full of vigor down to these things hurt. Maybe we shouldn't be doing this.
It hit me with a critical hit, I think, and that's what took me down to 1 hit point at some point, and it was hitting hard. We ended up taking it down. This is sort of where we have left the party at the end of this session. We had just defeated this thing, this Verbig, and we are wounded. We are out of spells. We are in this cave, this Verbig cave, with multiple passages going who knows where. That's sort of where we're at right now in the in the campaign, and we talked a little bit about what we should do. Should we try to go back to town? Should we rest here?
Yeah. I felt like we'd made the decision that we were going to rest here, but it's going to be dicey because it's we need to set up rests. Most of the parties, at least the big hitters, are heavily damaged. We're out of spells. We really need to get some good rest for all the casters, and it's just wow, we do not have a good spot right now. Yeah, hopefully there's not a third one.
Big cavern there, and it was a pretty big room, and there was goats over there, but there was those 2 barrels and crates. We were really hoping, I think, those couple of barrels might have been the mead we were looking for, but through some more poor investigating rolls, barrels were a barrel of salt and a barrel of pepper, which may be of some value, but we'd have to haul them somewhere to actually sell them. And then the crates, one was full of hay, which was, kind of for the animals. And I was trying to remember what was in the other one now. I don't remember what was in the second crate.
I don't know. All I know is we spent like 10 minutes trying to open the damn crates.
Oh yeah, the one was stuck real bad. Like I think it took like 3 of you to open it finally because we all were failing. There was a card in there. I think we talked about maybe we could repair somehow.
Repair, yeah.
Then there was like 3 other passageways that are yet to be kind of discovered here, so we don't know what else could be lurking in there. The Verbig had actually come out of one of the passageways as we had come into that main chamber. But yeah, as you said, like we were debating if it would be safe for a short rest, but a short rest wouldn't really help everybody as much as they would need, kind of thing. And then doing a long rest in that chamber might be dicey because we don't know what's lurking. And same with the path back to town and out of the cave. Like we don't know what's going to happen since most people are pretty rough shape at this point.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's always the challenge. Right, difficult decisions.
It puts you in a nice kind of dramatic spot. You have this really tense combat where some of us got really close to death, and now we have this tough choice to make. A dramatic spot to be in. It's cool.
Yeah, perfect to be continued to end our session on.
Yeah. I think the only other thing of note I remember was that in this bonfire that was in the middle of this chamber, we noticed that there was a human arm with like a ring on it. Maybe I think we surmised that might have been the speaker of Good Mead who was getting roasted up there. So we'll have to figure that out.
Restrain himself from immediately just ripping a chunk off.
Yeah.
To determine what may be on the spit there.
We're hungry. Oh, wait a minute. No, we're not eating that. Swifty also happened to find a burnt book.
Yes.
In the fire, and he pulled out remains were of the book, which led to a really cool prop that I forgot to hand out while Matt and Robin were still there. So they'll get to see it on the next session.
Yeah, it was like a two pieces of parchment paper burned, and like you had burned holes in some of it, and it had script printed on there, and the edges were all burnt like you would expect, like if it had been just tossed in a fire. Looked really, really cool.
So other than printing the sheet on regular printer paper, I actually stained that paper. I did all the burning on it, everything. So
so the reason it looked kind of parchment was because you stained it, is what you're saying?
Yep.
Oh,
I
is that like
the
tea or something like that?
Coffee.
Oh, okay.
We usually have leftover coffee in the morning, so I just soaked it in coffee for a little bit and then let it dry and crumpled it up before I went in the coffee. And yeah,
nice.
Cool.
DIY parchment paper.
So yeah, that was cool. So I was really pleased with the way the session went. It was, for me, it was a lot of fun. It was a little tense. There was both of those Verbig easily could have. I think by having them separated, it made it more manageable for a bunch of level 2 characters, but a single hit from any of those Verbig could have taken one of you down, just a normal hit. I wanted to try to manage that to not completely, like, I didn't think it was going to set up a TPK, but it got close in that second combat. You guys were pretty well stretched, but they were not. This is the thing. They're basically just bags of hit points and damage output. So 6 player characters in the party chew through them pretty fast.
Well,
I think you can expect us to be more cautious wandering into random caves and maybe a little more strategic in our combat tactics or something. Because,
I guess it works out if we're only level 2 or whatever, so maybe we don't know exactly what we're doing. We'll probably figure it out as we go, and our actions might follow along.
Or die trying. I mean, I will say I called it, though. I said I would be the first one to die. Well, I was
didn't
the
die.
first one to enter the dying state.
You failed. I think you failed the death save too.
I failed
right?
the first one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fortunately, somebody got you some healing, and you did not have to rely on dice rolls to survive, so that was good. And so far, we still have a full party of the original 6.
Yep.
So at the beginning of the session, and this is where the DM tips come in, because at the beginning of each of these D&D sessions, because most of my players are playing 5th edition D&D for the first time, I feel like it's a really good thing to bring up a rule or an aspect or something I want to focus on or make sure that people are thinking about as we continue through the campaign. And so this session, I brought up character death. From my standpoint as a DM, I want to. There's a lot of investment. Not every D&D campaign is like this, but there's a lot of investment in backstory and in placement of the characters in the campaign and tying them to the narrative elements that are happening in the campaign. I think it's something you have to work to do it in Rime of the Frost Maiden, but it really tries to give you that framework, but let you have that creative customization so you can make it your own right in the campaign book. And I wanted to make sure I emphasize that as an option for all of you players, that if something happens inevitably awful to your character, let's hope that that doesn't, but in case it does, that I'm dropping in occasional NPCs that you could take over and turn them into player characters. Now, that doesn't have to be the case. You can customize and take your own player character, but I thought it was a great way to let you know that, hey, if there's an NPC that you see that's great, then you can dive in and start running that character. The other thing that I thought was really great with that is that I offered to, if you do make a backup character so that if something bad happens to your character at the start of a session or something like that, that it would be relatively easy to work in your backup character, because if your backup character is already done, it gives me options. Like I can start building in that backstory or those tie-ins, or we can sort out where it's going to come in, or it could even your backup characters could even make an appearance or two and run into the party while the party is still doing stuff. Character death is something that I think as a DM you need to address with your players. It's probably something that could or should be addressed in maybe a session 0 or up front early, but I thought it was an appropriate time, particularly with a bunch of tough combats, to go through and make sure that everybody had an idea. And I think it's something that you, as a DM, should discuss with your players before you get too far into the game and it happens, because far too many times players get attached to their characters, and when that character dies, who knows what kind of drama you might have just inserted into your game. All right, and that's your DM tip for this session, or for this one. And that should wrap it up for our episode of Tales of the Cold North, episode 1. That's our inaugural episode. I am sure that you guys are all excited to follow the harrowing tales of these fine adventurers and see where this campaign takes them. Of course, if you are interested in running this game, you can always pick up the campaign, Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frost Maiden, at your local friendly gaming store, or just give them a call over at Misty Mountain Games, and they'll go ahead and be able to take it and get it shipped out to you if you aren't here local to Madison. So that said, I think we're done. Thanks, guys, for jumping on and doing this.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thanks, guys.
See you next
So
time.
much excitement. Woo! All right. Until next time, peace out.
Stay cool.